Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction, but it's happening right now.
Seriously, just think about that for a second. What if you could actually sit down and have a conversation with your great-great-great-grandparent? What would you even ask? It's this incredible fantasy, right? Especially if you're at all curious about where you come from.
Well, one genealogist actually decided to try and make it happen. He wanted to bridge that 200-year gap, not with some kind of spiritual medium, but with software. This is the story of how he used AI to have a conversation with an ancestor who lived 2 centuries ago.
So, our story starts with a woman named Rebecca Rich. She was born way back in 1788 in England. And for the next few minutes, we're going to hear her story, and it's going to sound like it's coming from her own words.
Okay, so picture this. The year is 1860. In a small cottage in England, Rebecca, now an old woman, is sitting by the fire, ready to tell her grandkids about her life. It's a life that has spanned 7 decades. So let's just listen in.
You know, when she's asked about her childhood, she talks about having to grow up incredibly fast. Her mother died young, and she basically had to become a mother to her own siblings. She says those tough years, well, they taught her everything she needed to know about running a home and eventually raising her own 11 kids.
But her life wasn't all hardship. It was also filled with these really simple, beautiful joys. Her wedding to John Rich, for instance, it wasn't some grand affair, just bread, cheese, and ale, but they got married on Valentine's Day, and all the women in the village said that was a lucky sign. Looking back after 45 years of marriage, she figures, you know what, maybe they were right. It's such a human little detail.
But of course, a life that long is never just one thing. It's a study in contrasts, really. It was filled with absolutely profound joy, but also incredible loss, an enormous change.
And this really gets to the heart of her experience. On one hand, she talks about the indescribable pain of losing 2 of her children, saying that grief is just the price we pay for love. But then on the other hand, she says her single most joyful day wasn't even her wedding. It was the day she watched 3 of her kids get baptized all at once. Just a moment of pure, overwhelming gratitude after so much heartbreak.
And can you just imagine the strength it took to watch 3 of your children sail away to America, a place she said seemed as far away as the moon? She describes her heart feeling like it was torn in 3, but at the same time she was just swelling with pride for how brave they were. She treasured every single letter that made its way back across that vast ocean.
And this is maybe the most powerful piece of wisdom she shares. She tells young mothers to just love their children fiercely. Don't worry about being perfect, just make sure they feel listened to. Make them feel like they're the most precious things in your world. I mean, that's advice that feels just as true and powerful today as it must have back in 1860.
So for the past few minutes, we've been listening to the voice of Rebecca Rich, a woman who died in 1862. Except that wasn't Rebecca Rich. Not really. So who was actually speaking?
That's right. Every single word of that interview, all those moving, heartfelt memories, they were generated by a machine. We weren't listening to a historical document. We were listening to a technological creation.
So what is this exactly? Well, you could call it a new kind of genre, AI-assisted historical fiction. The idea is you take the dry facts, the names, the dates, the places, and you use them as a skeleton. Then you ask an AI to imagine the person behind those facts and to write their story, to fill in all those emotional gaps that history just doesn't record.
And the process he used was actually pretty straightforward. First, the genealogist, a guy named Randy Seaver, gathered all the data he could find on his 3rd great-grandmother. Step 2, he fed that whole report to an AI tool called Claude. Step 3, he gave it a really simple prompt. Just act like you're Rebecca in 1860 and answer these 10 questions. And then finally, he just cleaned up the text to make sure it was accurate. And that was it.
Okay, so this whole thing raises a really fascinating and maybe a little bit of an unsettling question. If we can generate stories from the past that are this convincing, what does that mean for how we understand history itself? I mean, this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If those words weren't actually spoken by Rebecca Rich, do they have any value at all? Does it matter that we're basically reading a piece of fiction? even if it feels incredibly true?
For the genealogist who created this, the answer comes down to his purpose. He says he's not trying to fool anybody. He's using this AI-generated story as a tool. It's a way to turn a list of names and dates into a person that his living relatives can actually connect with on an emotional level.
So really, the true power here is the ability to turn data into feeling. It takes all those dry facts and spins them into a story that feels tangible, that builds a bridge of empathy across the centuries. It makes history personal. It helps us go from knowing that an ancestor lived to imagining how they lived. And that brings us right back to our own families, doesn't it? Think about your own family tree, those names and dates you might have somewhere. If you could use this technology to bring just one of them to life, who would you choose? And what would be the first thing you'd ask?